I'm John Rodgers from up in Cuyahoga Falls, and we'll be looking at the state of Wyoming in this particular program. And you will see this picture again, this beautiful title picture here. That is Minerva Springs in Yellowstone National Park. But getting on into the program, hear those groans and creaks and other strange sounds? They come from trails crossing my land. See and hear those water movements, cascades, streams, rivers, waterfalls, and geysers breaking free to throw tons of water into the sky in grand plumes. And yes, that's Old Faithful. See that magnificent monolith up in my northeast section and wonder about the geology of it and all my land. Hear those feminine voices across my land and know that something important has happened. And this is the little town of South Pass City. All this and more calls you to my land. I am Wyoming, land of wonders. That part of me east of the Rockies is part of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. I am 9th in area in the United States, but only 50th in population. I became a state in 1890. Those groans and creaks are coming from covered wagons crossing on the Oregon and Mormon trails. They started in the east along the North Platte River and crossed over my land to the southwest corner at Old Fort Bridger. In my land is a unique area set aside in 1872 by far-thinking men as the first national park in the world, Yellowstone. And that magnificent monolith, Devil's Tower, and the Indians call it Bear Lodge, was set aside by President Theodore Roosevelt as the first national monument under the Antiquities Act. The highlight of my beauty lies far to my western lands and is so spectacular that your United States has declared it a national park, Grand Tetons. I am known as the Equality State, and that name has reference to those feminine voices, for I am the first state that granted a vote to women in 1869, and all of that flowed out of this tiny little town that you are looking at. Yes, I am also known as the Cowboy State, and my state bird is a masterpiece, the western meadowlark. Come along now and we'll see wonders all across my land. We'll take closer looks also at those already mentioned. And that is one of my belt buckles purchased out in Wyoming. As a matter of fact, I have that particular one on today as we are recording this. Now, I have been in Wyoming 12 times, actually 13 by now. It's on mountain time. Its lowest point is 3,100 feet in the Belle Fourche River Valley in the northeast part of the state. And Wyoming touches 6 states, Nebraska, South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Utah, and Colorado. And on my map here, and that is solder that I use to mark it, this is the Bighorn Mountains. We're going there. We're going down into the Medicine Bow Mountains down here. This is the pointer pointing more or less to Devil's Tower, the Bear Lodge. This is Yellowstone National Park, all up in here. This is the Tetons right below Yellowstone. And this marker coming across here, that is the Oregon and Mormon trails. We're going to start in with Devil's Tower or Bear Lodge, the first national monument proclaimed by Theodore Roosevelt all the way back in 1906. It's a basalt pillar, the core of a volcano, and it was formed about 60 million years ago. It's 867 feet high above its base, and it's 5,112 feet above sea level. This formation is one of the 5 most sacred places in the heritage of the Northern Plains Indians. This would include the Sioux, the Shoshone, the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and the Kiowa. There is a 1.5 mile trail around the base, and you will see rock like this, which you do not want to go into because they house rattlesnakes. But you will see prayer offerings along as you, at the base of the, looking south now, out from the base of the Bear Lodge, Devil's Tower. And you will see signs like this, and you will see little prayer offerings, little packets of tobacco and strips of cloth and so forth as you go through. We'll be talking about that same thing as we get out into the Bighorn Mountains also. But this is a sacred place. Now, how did this wonderful formation come into being? Now, this story is not mine. It comes from the Kiowa Indians. And I hope the next picture you can see, you will be able to see the Big Dipper, the stars of the Big Dipper, because that figures in this. 8 children were there at play, 7 sisters and their brother. Suddenly the boy was struck dumb. He trembled and began to run upon his hands and feet. His fingers became claws and his body was covered with fur. Directly there was a bear where the boy had been. The sisters were terrified. They ran and the bear after them. They came to the stump of a great tree, and the tree spoke to them. It made them climb upon it, and as they did so, it began to rise in the air. The bear came to kill them, but they were just beyond its reach. It reared against a tree and scored the bark all around with its claws. The 7 sisters were born into the sky, and they became the stars of the Big Dipper. That's a real neat story. That actually is a neater story than the geological formation of the tower. And this is the most friendly area for prairie dogs. The prairie dog town here on your way into to walk around the tower. These are the friendliest ones. I've been able to get close to them to take their pictures than any other place that I have been out in the West. And here's how the prairie dogs live. This is a diagram taken from one of the books about the Western animals. See how they sit up, and this is how they give their alarm. He will sit up like this, and he will let out a little squeak that is really piercing. And very close to the Devil's Tower, you will also see another animal, a beautiful western animal, the pronghorn antelope. This is the fastest land animal in North America. Those pronghorns or antelope can hit 50 miles an hour. And then you also see up on the tower from time to time climbers. And here are a few up there right in the middle. And here is my note. Climbing this sacred place should be stopped. You don't climb church steeples for sport, and this is holy ground. And then there are many species of birds, including hawks, eagles, both golden and bald, prairie falcons, all seen here flying around the top of the tower. Deer and prairie dogs are the most common mammals. I didn't show you a deer, but I showed you antelope because they're fairly common here also. The Belle Fourche River passes close by to here. And yes, you can still see real cowboys in Wyoming, but you must get off the interstates and onto the little roads. And sometimes you have to just stop and wait until the cowboys get the cows across the road. And here are some of the old Texas longhorns that I photographed up in Wyoming. There are still a few. I've photographed them down in Oklahoma and other places as well, but that's what the horns used to look like on these. And now we'll go out to north central Wyoming, and these are the Bighorn Mountains. On top of the Bighorn Mountains, all is green, grasses, shrubs, trees, cattle in open stock range, and deer are seen as you make your way across. You're at 8,000 to 9,000 feet elevation, and the air is crisp. If it's autumn, the aspen may have turned to gold. If it is spring or early summer, expect beautiful wildflowers. Several routes cross the Bighorns. Ten Sleep Canyon and Shell Canyon are very beautiful crossings. The passes are about 9,000 feet above sea level. There's some of the cattle out there. They're on open range, no fences. Streams and waterfalls are found in these crossings, and at times you will find some wildlife. Formations sometimes look like old temples that have been put there by the Romans. Not quite, but anyhow, that was here's one of the deer. That last was a nice picture with the snow still on the mountains. And this one is a different year. These programs I do are composites. I've been out there enough times to have a selection to choose from. Little streams and all kinds of wonderful things coming down. Here's one of the waterfalls I talked about in one of those crossings. I think this is in Shell Canyon. And there's one of the Roman temples up on the hill. At least it looks like a Roman temple to my wife and I. And here's one of the little fellows around, a chipmunk. He's got a lot to eat out there. There's plenty of food for him. And here is Indian paintbrush. Indian paintbrush is a state flower. And this picture was taken right on the top of the Bighorns. And I like to leave this picture on while I'm reading this quote from Ghostways. That's by Tony Hillerman, who put these words into the mouth of a wise old Navajo named Frank Sam Nakey. And he says, memorize places. Settle your eyes on a place and learn it. Touch it with your mind. Inhale the air that moves across it. Listen to the sounds it makes. See it under the snow and when first grass is growing. And as the rain falls on it, feel it and smell it. Walk on it. Touch the stones, and it will be with you forever. When you are far away, you can call it back. When you need it, it is there in your mind. Beautiful Bighorn Mountains, some of the most wonderful ones. They're not the highest by any means, but they're really wonderful. And my wife and I have enjoyed crossing them a number of times. There are a lot of lupines and other flowers in this picture in early summer, well, our early summer. And some more lupines as this stretches out. Nice blue skies, puffy little clouds, and so forth. Now, back in 1960, on my family's first visit out here, the road to the east looked like this. You can see it down in through there, and it wound its way over the end of the mountain, getting you down there. And that very night, we pitched our tent on the eastern side in Tongue Creek Canyon, where the moon decorated the sky for us. And that is another one of those temple-like formations with the moon right behind it. And now a word about the medicine wheel that is up in the Bighorn Mountains. And this is another sacred place. This picture was taken some time ago because the little fence around it has been changed drastically since that time. And here's what it looks like now. The medicine wheel is located at 9,642 feet above sea level in the northern part of the Bighorn Mountains in central Wyoming. Whether it goes back to 1700 AD or 1200 AD, it reflects thousands of years of Indian culture. Why a circle? The circle is at the heart of many Indian cultures. No beginning, no end. Everything is connected to everything else. All people and nature and the maker. And the fence looks like this now. They have wooden posts and they have rope running through. And what are all the things hanging on the rope? These are prayer offerings. They're little strips of fabric. They're little pouches of tobacco. Tobacco is considered a great offering. They're dream catchers like this one here. And each one of those is a prayer to the Great Spirit for some particular person that the other particular person hung there in their honor and for them. The 80-foot diameter wheel is now circled by wooden posts, as you can see, and you no longer drive up to it. You walk 1.5 miles on the top of the big horns to get to it. When you get there, because of the rock and general terrain, it would be hard to do, but take off your shoes, for the ground on which you stand is holy, comes to mind. These sheep, they can be right up close by the medicine wheel, and that is snow on the ground in the background. In the center of that medicine wheel is a cairn, and from it radiate 23 spokes out to the edge of the circle, all made of stone, and so forth. So picture yourself in land like this, in the medicine wheel right by you. You're on windswept Medicine Mountain. Thousands have come here to worship, to find themselves and their way, to reestablish ties to the Great Spirit by whatever name you use. And then you think of the others and remember the prayer items that you have brought. And today you will tie those strips of prayer cloth, pouches of tobacco, dream catchers to the rope surrounding this most holy ground. You will offer your prayers to the Great Spirit, and then you will silently depart. Now we're going on further west now, just a few pictures in Thermopolis. This is a hot spring state park, so all this water is hot. You'll find it hotter over at Yellowstone, but this is hot also. But this has no geysers, to my knowledge, in it. But it is, if you're going through this area, it's certainly worth stopping at this Hot Springs State Park. And some of the formations are reminiscent of what you'll see over at Yellowstone. We've gone over, and this is north of Cody, over west, and this is north of Cody. This is Hart Mountain. And the reason I put this in is during World War II, an internment camp for Japanese was here by Hart Mountain, just north of Cody. It's rather an infamous part of American history. But Cody has a beautiful Buffalo Bill Historic Center. And this is about 5 museums in one. It's a Buffalo Bill Museum, and there is the old boy there with his rifle. And it's a Western art, Plains Indians, firearms, natural history, and also a research library, all in this one. And this is a moose statue just outside of it. And then inside in the firearms area, I think it might have the word Remington with it, Remington firearms, I'm not sure. It has all sorts of rifles and guns and so forth. This painting here is by Charlie Russell, and this is the Indians and, well, a fight's going on there. Now, we will see it in a moment, but there's an outside statue of Buffalo Bill as a scout. He was also a Pony Express rider, and he usually did a 76-mile run here in Wyoming on that route. Notice the pistols. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. This statue of these horses is done by Borglum, and he is the same one that did Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills. Here's the statue of Buffalo Bill. Outside, you can see it through the window in the the Western Art Museum. This is a statue of Buffalo Bill as a scout. If he were a Pony Express rider, he would not have the rifle. He might have 2 knives on his legs, and he would may have 2 pistols, but he would not have a rifle. They had to move so fast, they couldn't handle a rifle. And when you see these on television where the Pony Express rider has a rifle, they are in error. In the Plains Indians part of this, you go back and you're led through all kinds of interesting things back in there, and it's hard to photograph them, and so you go to other places. And I'm back in the Western Art here, and this is what one of the painters, this one is Edgar Paxson, thought that Custer's Last Stand might have looked like. This is here. Custer's Last Stand was over to the east in Montana. And this is a little garden. The building you see there is the Western Art building, the Plains Indians building, and you are coming through a little garden to get into the rest. And this is a statue of Sacagawea by Henry Jackson. And Sacagawea is the Shoshone woman who helped lead Lewis and Clark out to the Pacific. And yes, our family were tent campers for many, many years. And this is our 1960 campsite at Cody. And that's a grizzly bear that I photographed almost to Cody, about maybe 5 miles to the west towards Yellowstone. And I photographed that just 2 years ago. And the grizzly bears have been coming back in there pretty good. And now we're going to talk just a little bit about those trails. This is the state of Wyoming, and this is the route of the trails. Now, at this point, the North Platte River is running here. The Mormon Trail is still on the north part of the north side of the river. The Oregon Trail is on the south side, but right here at Fort Laramie, the 2 trails come together, and then all the rest over here, all down to Fort Bridger, is all one trail. And there are a number of things that lead off to it. But it comes into Wyoming in the southeast corner and then goes on up. Much of the trail in Wyoming is over 5,000 feet, and it goes up at South Pass to 7,500 feet. And I just love this sign. There's a little town called Fort Laramie. There is a Fort Laramie, and then the town of Fort Laramie is there. I guess it's called the city. No, it's the town of Fort Laramie. Welcome to Fort Laramie, 350 good people and 6 soreheads. This was an open fort, and here is the fort. This was an open fort. No protective walls came into being in the 1840s. This was after the trails had started. And that building you see over there is called Old Bedlam. It's the oldest military building in Wyoming. This fort was busy 45 days out of a year. And besides the Oregon and Mormon trails, the Pony Express and the Overland Stage used this same route and would stop here at Fort Laramie. And at this time, if you were on the Oregon Trail, you had gone a third of the way to Oregon. This is one of the barracks there, the enlisted men's barracks. And then here is the parade grounds with a view from Old Bedlam. Looking out on another part of the fort. Now, in the Guernsey area, we are over in east, but we have come past Fort Laramie, and the next place that you would stop today if you were interested in these trails. You can see two features. First is Register Cliff, and there you can see some of the names that were cut. This is one name that was cut in the rock on Register Cliff. And here is a little bit more. You can see Ohio there, M. Coolidge, Ohio, and so forth. And so you can see those, and then you can go over about a mile to a mile and a half to this area. Now, in many places where the terrain was flat, you could spread your wagons and the trail might be a mile, mile and a quarter wide. But at this place, the terrain is so rough that every wagon went through this cut where my wife is standing there. This is cut in limestone. And all of those carts, 350,000 people went through this cut here in the limestone. The ruts are there, and you can walk in the same tracks of the pioneers. And I know that you are on the Oregon Trail at this point because you're cutting through some really rough stuff. And here's another one as you're going. We're looking west now. When you get through there, you're out onto more or less flat land at that point. And then you push on, and you're at Independence Rock. This is a painting now, and that is Independence Rock in the background. It got its name because trappers celebrated the 4th of July, 1830, at that rock, and that's how it got its name. Lichens have covered many of the names and so forth. Lichen is a little plant, algae and fungi, and it digs into to the rock. But you can still see a number of the names carved in, and on this end of it, they have put up metal plaques as well as the names since the pioneers had come through here. Independence Rock is about 193 feet high, and we are now in what is known as the Sweetwater country. And the Sweetwater is a little stream that empties into the North Platte. And this is that's the Sweetwater stream going through here. Now, the wagons did not go through Devil's Gate. That's Devil's Gate off to the left here, and I'll show you. Here's a closer picture. They did not go through that. It's on the north side as the wagons went from east to west. You can stand and see the very area where the wagons rolled through, while many of the people were walking. I mentioned in another program that if you were on this trail, walking was actually easier than riding in the covered wagons. It was not a very pleasant ride, the covered wagons. And a marker points out the area from which you are viewing right here, that you're looking out there, and this marker tells you that a number, many actually, unmarked graves are out in that ground of pioneers who never got to the promised land. Right out, starting at the bottom of the picture and stretching on out there, are unmarked graves. And in this area, this same Sweetwater area, the Mormon disaster of 1856 occurred, in which the Willie and Martin handcart companies, they were using handcarts to pull all of their belongings. They fell prey to the cold, snow, and ice. Besides the loss of limbs, 200 died here in the Sweetwater area. Now, Split Mountain, that's the one in the background. Split Mountain was probably noted and passed, unless the daylight was calling a halt for the night, and then you might camp within sight of it, but not generally. And this strange, well, this is how I wanted to tell you about this. I forgot I had this picture in. I wanted to tell you about this. See, this land is fairly flat here, and so you can spread the wagons, and not everybody eats all the dust of the lead wagons on that day. But like we saw at Guernsey, back over to the east, it was too rough, and you went on the single track through. And there is a strange looking mountain in the background. I found out after I took the picture and called it a strange looking mountain that it is called Muddy Mountain. And the wagons passed right down through, see, the wagons were coming this way, and they passed right in front of Muddy Mountain. And the Sweetwater empties into the North Platte, not too far from here. All the way back in 1960, when my family first went out west, we were coming up from Craig, Colorado, making our way towards the Tetons, and we stopped at this trail. And that little bit of trail that you see leading off into wherever, that is the Oregon Trail. And a marker reads, "To the pioneers," this mark off to the left, "to the pioneers who passed this way to win and hold the West." And the Oregon Trail, that's the marker. That's one of the markers. There are a couple that say the same thing, in memory of those who passed this way to win and hold the West. Now, this is the Continental Divide here at South Pass. Continental Divide at this point is not too high, but remember, you're in a covered wagon, so it seems high. It's 7,550 feet above sea level, and you are 1/2 of the 2,170 miles from Independence, Missouri to Oregon City over in Oregon. And this is just north of the Great Divide Basin. Further on, actually not too far beyond there, is a place called, it's a junction. It's called the Parting of the Ways. It's about 6 miles beyond South Pass. And for the Mormons and the Pony Express, this junction had no significance. You had to use a left turn. I got you on to one of my buckles now. You had to use the left fork, but for those heading to Oregon, the right fork saved 50 miles on the way to Fort Hall in Idaho. But there was no water for the next 3 days. Now, before you lightly dismiss this, think of the people, the draft animals and the other stock in the wagon train, and the need of all of these for water for about 3 days. And finally, down in the southwest corner of Wyoming is Old Fort Bridger. It was a trading post started in 1842, and the Mormons dropped down into the Salt Lake Valley from here, while the Oregon Trail went northwest to Fort Hall in Idaho. Now, I don't think they had these kind of buildings when the pioneers were coming by, but they would have welcomed them, I'm sure. But this is Old Fort Bridger. Now, remember these pioneers and give thanks that they did make this difficult journey. And this is a picture I took out of a brochure from Wyoming, as a matter of fact, showing a Phantom train, a Phantom covered wagon train going across Wyoming to win and hold the West. And now we'll go to Yellowstone. Here's a map of Yellowstone. Now, this is the edge of it. We will be in these little blocks here. This blue here, this is the caldera of an ancient volcano within this blue line here. This is where the title slide was taken. That's Mammoth Crystal Springs. Here are the canyons. Old Faithful is over here, and so forth. Now, this upper part is in Montana. This western part is in Idaho. But most of Yellowstone is in Wyoming. It's the world's first national park, 1872. It was more or less discovered by John Coulter in 1807 and 1808. It was often called Coulter's Hell. And because of the extensive areas of thermal activity, its area, that's why they called it Coulter's Hell. But its area is 3,500 square miles. It's larger than Rhode Island, but not quite as large as Connecticut. Yellowstone has about 75% of the world's geyser activity. And what you're looking at is Morning Glory Pool, because I have started in Yellowstone at the Old Faithful area, which is called the Upper Geyser Basin. And we are out on the boardwalk, and you stick to the boardwalk. It's no telling how thin the crust is out here. And that is Old Faithful spouting again while we were still out on the boardwalk. Old Faithful isn't all that faithful. It erupts on an average of every 94 minutes for about 1.5 to 5 minutes. It goes up an average of about 130 feet, but it can go all the way to 180 feet with water that's 204 degrees as it starts. And of course it cools rather rapidly. It pours out 3,700 to 8,400 gallons each time it erupts. And as I mentioned, the boardwalk takes you out to all sorts of interesting things, hot springs and pools and so forth. And we'll go out and look at some of those. But first, a word from our bears. There is a campground right at Old Faithful, or there was. I'm not sure it's still there. And this is a mother bear, and she brought her 2 cubs to have lunch at the campground. And she takes her claws and flips open the garbage can cover, and it falls back, and then she and the bears can have their full of whatever is in there. Here's Old Faithful with a nice blue western sky going up. And out on what is called the basin, the geyser basin, is another geyser. This is not as big or as prominent, and it's very irregular. And you have a lot of that in Yellowstone. Here's another hot pool. Now, when I say hot, you put your hand in there and you will scald it in most cases. And then here is another geyser at a different place. Now, while I'm showing you a few more pictures of this nature, let me read to you one of the quotes from John Muir, who was one of the people who founded the Sierra Club, of which I'm fairly active, and he was also its first president. It's the oldest environmental conservation group in the world. He says, "The Yellowstone National Park is a big wholesome wilderness on the broad summit of the Rocky Mountains, favored with abundance of rain and snow. Besides the treasures common to most mountain regions that are wild and blessed with a kind climate, the park is full of exciting wonders. The wildest geysers in the world are dancing and singing in it." This one is Steamboat Geyser, and this is the one that goes the highest in the world. This will go over 300 feet, but it doesn't erupt very often, and it doesn't give much notice that it is going to erupt. So you have to take your chances. Other geyser areas, Norris is a good place to see thermal activity. And as you go through all of here, you're getting the smell of rotten eggs. You're getting that sulfur smell. And it opens up your nostrils if you have a problem there. The activity of Steamboat Geyser varies all over the lot. But I think it's interesting that it is the largest in the world. See, the other geysers in the world are mostly in New Zealand and Iceland. But right here in Yellowstone is 75% of them. And the hot springs are just fantastic. Now we're going to one more place dealing with hot springs, and this is West Thumb area, and these are called the paint pots. These are the ones that remind me, they go plop, 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 and they remind me of oatmeal cooking as I go around. It's changed quite a bit here at West Plum. The geyser activity has expanded here since we first saw it in 1960. It has now a number of hot springs, and it has thermal activity right on the edge of Yellowstone Lake. That's the lake you saw in the background that you can see in the background here. That lake is a highland lake. That's at better than 7,000 feet above sea level, and it is really big. This is right on the edge of Yellowstone Lake, the crystalline formations that have formed there. Now this is back from the lake, a hot spring with some more of the crystalline formations there. Here you can see Yellowstone Lake now. And that's a bald eagle. The reason I put it in here is I took the picture. He was circling above me just on the northern edge of Yellowstone Lake. And this is Yellowstone Lake, 136 square miles. Oh, I have the elevation here, 7,733 feet above sea level and 136 square miles. At that elevation, that has got to be one of the largest lakes in the world, probably at that elevation. And we're going to follow this lake. It's going to come out into what is known as Hayden Valley as a stream. This is the Yellowstone River coming off of that lake, and it's flowing away from us over into those mountains. This is part of the huge caldera from an ancient eruption. And what you're looking down at now, those are all buffalo down along the river there and in the grasses. Perhaps in this area you can see these days maybe a wolf, but I personally have not seen a wolf in Yellowstone. I've only seen two in my life in the wild, and they were both in Alaska. And so this is the river gently gliding through here over towards those mountains, and then when we get into those mountains, it first comes over the upper falls of the Yellowstone. It has left the valley, and the spectacular scenery of the canyon is starting. The upper falls are 109 feet, and then it goes through a series of rapids. This is still the upper falls here. It goes through a series of rapids, and then it drops. I am right on the edge of the lower falls as it is dropping down, and the lower falls drop 308 feet. And there you see it from a distant point. And that last picture, I was standing right in there alongside of the waterfall. Now, the canyon stretches for about 20 miles. It's about 800 to 1,200 feet deep, and it varies in width from about 1,500 to 4,000 feet. You may even look down on a circling osprey. And the rock here is rhyolite. And John, we change slides here. You can view this lower falls of the Yellowstone from several places, from where I took this picture, from up on the lip, and back from that scenic view, and from any direction. It is absolutely magnificent. Now I have turned the other way. You can see a little bit of the waterfall all the way in the back. That's the lower falls, but this is to show you what the canyon is like. This is called the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and if you look right in the middle there, you see an osprey, which we call a fishhawk, flying in the canyon. And then we're going to swing and look north, because the Yellowstone River goes up north. It goes into Montana, flows across Montana, and empties into the Missouri River up in North Dakota. So this river that you're seeing coming through here, and all that water's got a long way to go before it joins the Missouri. And it just keeps going and going, and it is beautiful. Now we have gone just north from what is known as the Canyon Country, and this is Tower Falls. This is 132 feet high, and it's making its way into the Yellowstone River in the northeast part of the Figure 8 loop of highway that goes through Yellowstone. It's a nice waterfall in its own right, but you have been spoiled by the Canyon Country here in Yellowstone when you see Tower Falls. Now we're going to hopscotch around Yellowstone a little bit, and then we're going to come back to one particular place. These days you will always see buffalo in Yellowstone, and you will see quite a few there. And these buffalo are descendants of the ones that Theodore Roosevelt had sent out to restock Yellowstone back when he was president. He did the same thing to the Wichita Mountains down in Oklahoma. And yes, you have to stop when the buffalo are crossing the road, because they aren't going to pay any attention to you, and you dare not touch one of them. And this is the first time I ever saw a buffalo taking his dust bath. He has just finished, he stood up. And it wasn't any use to take it when he was in the middle, but he has just stood up from taking a nice dust bath. It's recommended out there for all kinds of insects and so forth. And here's a nice bull. Our youngest son and I were out in Yellowstone not too long ago, and this guy was walking through the campground. We were camped in a tent, and the buffalo could come through the campground. It worked out fine. They left us alone, we left them alone, and it worked out just fine. This is the north entrance arch to Yellowstone National Park. This is the one Theodore Roosevelt went through when he first went out to Yellowstone. A few of the, and this is the northern area up by that north entrance. And then a few of the animals that you will see. Here's a coyote. He probably has pretty good pickings here in Yellowstone. And here's some more of that northern area. Now, the mountains off in the background are probably in Montana, because the line cuts right through here in the national park. There is one area up in the north, the northeast part, where you can go. They got a fence protecting it, but that is a petrified tree still standing, and there's several of them there. And here is a moose, and you might likely see a number of moose there. We have seen them actually crossing the road in Yellowstone. Here's some of those mountains to the north, and those mountains would definitely be in Montana. And I wanted you to see what trumpeter swans look like, because they're in Yellowstone, but I have to admit that this picture of them was taken completely in Montana, just north of the park. In the park again, Gibbons Falls, and the magnificent Yellowstone River. It's kind of little at this point, but it's going on its merry way towards the Missouri. And a beautiful bull elk. He's over in the western part, and there's forests over there, lots of forests. And somewhere around this place, people used to live, and they ate the Rocky Mountain sheep, and they found the bones of them in quantity around here. More or less, they guessed they were a little village, and so this is called Sheep Eater's Cliff. And the 1988 burn, here's part of it here. My wife and I were out the next year. We weren't there the year of the burn. And then here is a black bear that I had taken a number of years ago. That's a black bear. You don't see any hump on his back like you saw on the grizzly that I showed you over by Cody. And here's a cascade on the Firehole River. This is over in the western part of the park. And here is a bull elk. And here's that bull elk real close. Now we're going to end the Yellowstone part in the Mammoth Hot Springs area. Calcium carbonate travertine terraces is what this is considered. You see down in the background some buildings, and that is a little center for park activity. You can actually find a place to stay there for a price, and there are maintenance shops and so forth down there. But water seeps into the limestone south of this area, and the heat from magma and carbon dioxide dissolves the minerals. And as it oozes out here, the water cools, and the minerals are deposited in these terraces, as you see in this gorgeous one. And then quite often you'll see elk and pronghorn in these same areas. This, I don't know how this was formed, but this is called Liberty Cap. Evidently it formed, it was real hard, and things got washed away around it. But the one that I truly love is Minerva Springs. This is another terrace right close by that has just oozing and oozing. And here's a real close-up of the travertine ledges and so forth, as you see in one of these. And then the one that you saw on the title slide is this one, and this is called Minerva Springs. And that is the end of our section on Yellowstone. Now, going out the northeast corner of Yellowstone is the Beartooth Highway. And this wonderful road goes out of Yellowstone and it ends up in Montana all the way over at Red Lodge, after having crested the mountains at 10,947 feet. You spend time above timberline in the tundra, like I am here. You can see timberline is way down almost to the water in that picture. And all of this is right off the Beartooth Highway. I haven't walked even 100 feet from the Beartooth Highway to take these pictures. There's a lot of winding road and so forth on here. If you don't like that, you wouldn't like this. But my wife and I like to drive that kind of road, so we take turns. And it's magnificent. See, this is the road down in here that we have just come up. Now you have to look right in the middle of the picture, right over there, and that's how it got its name. That looks like a bear tooth, and this is the Bear Tooth Highway, named for that formation. And yes, that is snow in the foreground. Sometimes you get a little bit of moisture up there. We've never really gotten a heavy rain. We've probably been over that highway at least 3 times anyhow. And here's an older picture, and you can see off in the distance the Bear Tooth there as well. And I would recommend that highway to anybody. It is just magnificent. Now we're going over to another highway. This is I-80 and US 30. US 30 is the old Lincoln Highway, and they run together here, and of course they run like an interstate. But between Cheyenne and Laramie, a bust of Lincoln is at the high point of the Lincoln Highway, and this is it. This road goes all the way across the state, roughly following the original Lincoln Highway. And of course the Lincoln Highway goes right through Ohio as well. It is US Route 30. And we're dropping down now into the Medicine Bow Mountains. We head south into the Medicine Bow National Forest, and you cross the Snowy Range Pass at 10,847 feet. And this is probably the best picture I have of a pronghorn antelope. And remember, he can hit 50 miles an hour. The aspen is turning to gold in here, and the Medicine Bow sits right above Colorado. All of these pictures are down in that area, and it gets chilly here. That puts you somewhat above timberline, and when you get out to walk around, the air is thin, and it's a little chilly. From this vantage point, you can even see the Great Plains. There is one place there where there's a little tower or a little building sort of that you can go up to, and you can actually see the Great Plains stretching to the east. Quite often you will see antelope on your way into the Medicine Bow Mountains. And a lot of people drive right on by this on I-80, and they never get to see it at all. That's my quarter to give you an idea. See, we're above timberline, and these are tundra flowers, and they don't have much time to grow. They got about 3 months out of the entire year that they have to do everything they do, and that is start growing, flower, set seed, and then get back under as their protection. And remember, you're seeing all these pictures, and the air is cool, and maybe you already have a jacket on. You see quite a bit of snow out there. And here's a marsh marigold close up, so I must be in a boggy area here. And then a few more snow patches as we make our way down from the Medicine Bow. Now, I made quite a deal of the of South Pass City, and well, let me go through the rest of these pictures before I start talking about that, because these pictures are all in the Medicine Bow, just up from Colorado. Now I ought to concentrate on that. Pretty stuff. Clouds hanging low today. Nice picnic area, nobody around. Use it yourself. It's kind of cold this particular morning. It's early morning. And further on, you will see this road leading off from the paved highway out so that you can go through about 1.5 miles of wonderful aspen. And then some more mountains, and now we're going to talk about South Pass City. South Pass City is at 7,805 feet above sea level. It's just north of the pass, South Pass that we mentioned that the pioneers went across. And this little town was not formed as a town until there was gold discovered, and so that was in 1867. And that's when it was settled. This is the most wonderful little